Why is it that some people get away with saying things that go against sort of the orthodoxy of the day? I'm just thinking of Ricky Gervais. He's got his Netflix special all about trans stuff. And then other people, like maybe JK Rowling, Graham Linehan, have had it so hard from people and been cancelled in a sense?
It's a really good question, Andrew. I think there's a couple of factors here at play. Number one, the issue of sex is actually really important. If you are a woman talking about this, you are going to get far more flack than if you're a man. For the simple reason is that women have less of a physical presence. That's just a statement of fact. And as a result, and they're far more agreeable on the whole. And as a result of that, they're going to be far more likely to be bullied and receive flack from people online, particularly men. And particularly men as well who are misogynistic. And if a woman is gender critical, that gives certain people, certain men, let's be honest about it, far more free rein to be misogynistic against women than others. And also as well, look, the thing is with Ricky is that Ricky is a multi-millionaire. He makes Netflix a huge amount of money, an insane amount of money. Mm-hmm. So, as my left-wing girlfriend always says, capitalism always wins. And she's right. It does. It does. If you make a company insane amounts of money, clicks, a little bit of notoriety, which, let's be fair, is a little bit of spice added to it and means that people are talking about it as well and sharing the clips, then that in many ways is no bad thing for the company. And Ricky is, he's a comedic juggernaut. So Ricky is always going to be fine. Dave Chappelle is always going to be fine. Bill Burr, etc. They're always going to be fine. They've got to the point now where they're so powerful. They've got so many followers. They've got a legion of fans that it doesn't really matter. And the revenue they generate for these companies will always mean that the companies will ultimately back them. The problem comes not with the Dave Chappelle's or Ricky Gervais's or people of that ilk. The problem comes with the people further down, the people who are making their way in the clubs, the people who don't have a fan base, the people who don't have a large and loyal following. This is where it's really difficult. So if you're a comedian and you're starting out in the comedy clubs in the UK, you could find yourself very easily cancelled. You could find yourself very easily blacklisted. And you could find yourself, your career evaporates or is destroyed as a result of this. Those are the people that we actually should be talking about. And the problem is because they're not widely known, all these cancellations or blacklists happen in secret, people don't really talk about it because, it doesn't generate clicks. It doesn't generate outrage because these people are not very well known.
Yeah, we don't know who they are. Presumably you know people personally.
Yeah, I know people personally. I know many comedians who message me and say, look, I've been banned from this club or these series of clubs because I did this joke which has been interpreted as being racist, sexist, whatever else. And then a lot of the time you listen to these jokes and they're not that. They just happen to be on topics that people within the audience, and normally it's just one person in the audience, deems to be unacceptable. And then they put pressure on the promoter, and the promoter is a business person, and they're thinking to themselves, well, it's difficult, cost of living crisis, for example, at the moment. It gets harder and harder to entice people out of their homes, get them away from Netflix, get them out spending money when there's not a lot of money to go about. The easiest thing to do is just to appease our audience member, throw the comedian under the metaphorical bus, when the reality is as well, there is a lot of comedians out there. There are a lot of comedians out there. I'm going to go with the audience member. And the other challenge is this as well. And look, I have a great deal of sympathy for comedy promoters. Like I said, it's really tough time to get people to come out to watch comedians who they don't know, particularly in the age of celebrity. So they were looking at it and they'll go, why would I pick someone who is very good comedically, but could split a room, could alienate, could antagonize, which some of the best comedians can do and will do, when I could pick someone to do my night who is, for example, like Sean Walsh, who, I don't know if you know Sean, but Sean is a brilliant observational comic and can do 5 minutes, which are hilarious about what it's like to eat a jam sandwich. Why wouldn't I do that?
Yeah.
And everybody's going to watch it. They're going to laugh because he's brilliant, and they're all going to go home, and no one's going to get offended. Well, actually, we've probably got the point now where someone's going to get offended by a jam sandwich. But that's where we are, unfortunately, within the industry.
I think some people watching, what I want to get across to them is how sad that really is, because I think sometimes we hear that person was cancelled or whatever, and we don't care because we don't really know them, and we just think, oh, they're just doing another job. But presumably, I mean, to be a comedian, that's you're probably giving up on all different kinds of jobs and careers that maybe your friends are doing. You get to 30, 35, 40 when everyone else is maybe earning some money and you're still going at it. It's all you have. So being cancelled like that must be devastating.
It's absolutely devastating, because as a comedian, you need to grind away on the open mic circuit. Now, for those of you, most people who are listening to this have no idea what it is. These are terrible gigs in basements of pubs where there's no audience, and you have to do that for years and years and years before you can start to make your way, before you can start to break through, so you can hone your act, so you know who you are on stage. You know the types of jokes that you should be telling. You know how to structure a joke. You know how to deliver a joke. And then finally you start to make your way, and you finally start to break through, and you finally start to make some money. Not real money, just some money. And then that is taken away from you. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking for the people involved. And it's terrible for the art form as a whole, because what you're doing is you're narrowing the Overton window. Every time that this happens, that there's a cancellation or that there's an outrage, or people lose their livelihoods, there's a narrowing of the Overton window for everybody else, because as we all know, the most powerful form of censorship is self-censorship. I mean, my girlfriend, who is a left-wing woman of colour, blah, 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 and the reason I'm saying that is to illustrate this point, which is she went to watch a comedy show, and she came home, and she's American, and she's been brought up in the American tradition of stand-up. And I said, how was it, my darling? And she went, oh, can I be honest with you? I went, yeah, of course. She went, it was boring. And I went, well, what do you mean? And she went, well, nobody was saying anything interesting. Everything was so bland. There was nothing even mildly provocative or anything that you could sink your teeth into. And I'm like, and she was just like, it was really boring. I'm like, that isn't the fault of the comedians. That is the fault of the system. Because if the system punishes people for wrongthink, if the system punishes people for people who are daring to joke about topics that might be deemed to be edgy, then why would they go out and do more provocative material? Why would they challenge the norms? Why would they put themselves out on a limb when the reality is that you can lose your career overnight, or you can get cancelled from a series of clubs, and then you're no longer able to make a living, and you're no longer able to make ends meet.
It's horrible. It's horrible. And then what next? I don't know what you do next. It's really, really hard. You mentioned, of course, and I think it is relevant, left-wing girlfriend, person of colour. Yeah. I think that's important, because I think my YouTube demographics are probably fairly split, and there's definitely a bit of groupthink on both sides going, oh, the other side must be the enemy or whatever. And also, I mean, you're a well-rounded person. You're not a figure who's just on your YouTube screen. You're an actual real human being. And also, you approach, when I asked you that trans question about Ricky Gervais, you approached it from a very leftist place. Yeah. The corporations you had to go at, that's a very left-wing thing to do. Yeah. It's the corporations, capitalism, and misogyny is another aspect. So you're a well-rounded person, right? You're not. I guess what I'm getting at is that you're not a cartoon, are you?
No. I mean, the YouTube comments, I'm sure, would disagree with you. But no, but I feel that this is very, very important, because the problem with our society, as people have explained ad nauseum, is that we've become even more tribalistic than we normally have been, where you get left-wing talking points and you get right-wing talking points. And I always remember we had journalist Ed West on our show, and he made a very profound point about the importance of freedom of speech. And he said freedom of speech is so important because unless you're willing to talk about every facet of the problem, you are never going to solve that problem. And you can talk about an issue in a left-wing way or a right-wing way, and do you know what? Both sides probably, in fact, a lot of the time, have good points. But if you're just in one tribe, then you're only going to see the problem from a certain point of view, which means you're never going to be honest about the problem, hence you're never going to solve it. And when we talk about things such as inequality, the way the left talks about it and the way the right talks about it, they're both correct. But unless you are willing to go, right, I'm going to look at this side, I'm going to look at this side, and then I make up my own mind, that's the only way we're actually going to solve problems, not by being tribalistic. It's why I reject, now I reject when people say to me, are you left, or you right, are you conservative, or whatever else, because all you're doing when you identify with a tribe is you're downloading their way of looking at the world, let's call it an operating system. Now, the operating system might have some strengths to it, but it also has some weaknesses. And what you're doing when you're downloading the operating system is you're giving up your autonomy. You're saying that I'm no longer an individual, I'm just going to be a non-thinking member of this tribe. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to be a non-thinking member of the right, and I don't want to be a non-thinking member of the left. I want to be someone who makes their own mind up about any particular issue, whatever it is. I remember when Andrew Tate rose to infamy or prominence, whatever you want to call it. And I remember people going to me, well, what do you think about it? And I said, I don't know. I'm going to go away and I'm going to watch and I'm going to listen to his interviews and I'm going to make my own mind up. But he's this, he's that. And I'm like, no, I don't, your opinion is your opinion. You're entitled to it. I don't care about it. I'm going to make my own mind up. And then I went, and and he's a legend. No, I'm joking. He's not. I really dislike him, and I dislike his message, and I think it's incredibly toxic. But I made my own mind up about it.
Yeah.
And that's what I do with every subject. It's why with the whole Israel-Palestine, everybody's wading in with their opinions. I am someone who has got South American heritage, mother's Venezuelan, but my maternal grandfather is from Lebanon. So he's Coptic Christian, and he's from Tripoli, and he was from Tripoli in Lebanon, and that's where my family was from. Their name was Vasili Saud. So I know a little bit about the history, and I know a little bit about the feelings and the resentments on both sides, and how deep they go. And I haven't offered an opinion about it because I don't know enough about it. I know a little bit, but I don't know enough to offer an opinion. I don't know enough to actually make a public stance on it, because these things take time. You need to read about the history. You need to understand about it. You need to understand the culture. You need to understand about the religions, how the religions have seen this place. You need to understand about the military conflict. It's only when you've read all through that and you understand it and you come to a position, that's when you can start talking about it publicly.
I think it's interesting that, when you said that about Andrew Tate, if you hadn't clarified you were joking, my mind's already going, okay, 10% of the audience have just now switched off.
Yeah.
And isn't that crazy? Rather than
you've got a new 20% of an audience.
Yeah, I don't want those guys. But no offense to those guys. But I don't know, because some of them are listening. I don't want to offend them either. Yeah. That's all going through your head, isn't it? Audience capture. And it's ridiculous. But it's mad that people couldn't listen and go, isn't that interesting? Francis likes this guy who I think is abhorrent.
Yeah.
But I disagree with him on that. Let's keep listening. Instead, it would be off. I was on a podcast, Paula Poundstone, an American comedian podcast the other day, and she wanted to ask me about cults, because I'd done loads of stuff about cults, and she was saying, could Trump and Trump fans be a cult? And I said, well, absolutely. There's definitely a cultish elements of the Trump stuff, just as there is on the other side. And I felt the room change, and I felt it wasn't Paula's fault at all. It was just, she has to think about her audience, and I could tell I'm going to lose that audience now by saying this, but it's like mad if I don't. Why? But I know I'm not going to get as many people clicking over now, but I have to say these things. Do you think, again, cultish, I suppose, the slogans are a big part of all of this? Do you think slogans require you not to have to think? So the UN, I think, when the Israel-Palestine stuff was going on, the UN just came out with trans lesbians are lesbians. That was their view on Israel-Palestine. I think it was that. What was it? Is it Ryan someone? Do you know who I mean? The comedian, American.
Oh, Ryan Cole. No, not Ryan Cole. Ryan Long.
Ryan Long, he did that. He did a whole thing like, which side am I, Israel or Palestine? I want to put out a social media thing. Are people going to like me if I say this? Yeah. What about that? And then he said, let's see what the UN are saying. Trans lesbians are lesbians. Yeah. Again, it's just slogans though of free Palestine. Again, but what does it mean? We have to explore what that really means. Do you get fed up with slogans?
I do get fed up with slogans because it's a way of abdicating responsibility, which is a responsibility that you have to find out about a particular issue or subject. Now, There are people who are too busy. They've got families. They've got work. Fine, absolutely fine. But then your position should be, I don't know. And that is actually the position of integrity, which goes, I don't know enough about this subject to offer an opinion on it. But it's got to the point now, and I'm trying to write a routine about this, where that's not good enough anymore, because then you're not on the right side of history. So it's come to the point where you've had to be an expert on Brexit and Trump, and then the pandemic. We had to be an epidemiologist, a virologist, an immunologist, and now you've got to be an expert in Eastern European, Russian geopolitics, and now you've got to be an expert on the Middle East.
Yeah.
And actually, in order to become an expert, it takes a long time. And I always use this example. So let's say you woke up one day, you had a mole on your arm, and you're going, actually, that's a bit dodgy. And you had a mate who's a doctor, right?
Yeah.
And you went to see him, and you go, whatever his name is, Dave.
Yeah.
You go, Dave, would you mind taking a look at this mole of mine? What would Dave actually say? He would look at it and he'd go, do you know what? I'm not a dermatologist. I'm actually a cardiologist. I don't think it looks good, but I'm not sure. But I've got a mate who's a brilliant dermatologist. So I'll give you his number, call him up, and then you can go and see him next week. And that's a doctor who's had 6-7 years training, but yet he knows that he doesn't have the expertise to be able to offer an opinion on something like that, because he knows he's not an expert in that particular field. Now, if doctors do it, why can't we do it?
Dunning-Kruger, I imagine, the Dunning-Kruger. But you're right. And the hardest person I've ever interviewed is Richard Dawkins.
Yeah.
Because he says, I don't know all the time.
Yeah.
So I had to come up with double the normal questions. I did that with my producer, Michal, here, and he remembers how stressed I was.
Yeah.
Very stressful time. Turn up, and I've got all my questions, and I'm like, okay, what if I forget something?
Yeah.
And we were done in like 20 minutes because he said, I don't know. I couldn't say. I couldn't tell you about that. And I was like, right, which is the smart thing to do.
Of course.
And he's one of the smartest, he's obviously smart, Richard Dawkins.
Yeah.
But it wasn't great for interviewing, but I respected that integrity that he wasn't going to opine on stuff that he doesn't know about.
Yeah. And that is somebody who is very intelligent and is an expert in their field, which is evolutionary biology.
Yeah.
And to me, that is a sign of a human being that has a high level of integrity, that they're not willing to offer a soundbite or shoot from the hip on something that they don't know about.
Yeah.
That they don't know about. And this is why I am highly suspicious of the commentariat class, by that it's a fancy way of saying, journalists, spouting off. I see these journalists who are on these shows, whatever channel it may be. They're all, and one week they talk about Israel, Palestine, then they're on to talking about, the evils of lockdown and the effect it's had on the NHS. Then they're on to talk about the education system. And I go, either you're some next level genius, mate, or you're pulling this out of your arse.
Yeah. But you guys on Triggernometry presumably go from topic to topic.
We do it as interviewers, but we don't pretend. The original slogan of the show was, we don't pretend to be experts, we ask the experts. That was the original slogan of the show, number one, because back then we were interviewing mainly economists and people like that, and political analysts about what was going on with Brexit, why Brexit happened. And then we started to branch out. We talked to people who weren't actually experts. And so we had to change the opening slogan of the show. So that was number one. But number two, when we talk about things on our Raw show, we're doing it from a comedic point of view. We're doing it as a comedian, and we're saying we don't know what we're talking about. We're two idiots comedians being profane and irreverent about serious topics, and we're doing it from the point of satire.
I'd also say that you guys, and this is something about Joe Rogan as well, people often say, like, who's this idiot or whatever. And I do appreciate degrees, university education. These are obviously very important things. But Rogan has up close and personal done 3 hours, 3 times a week for 10, 15 years with some of the experts, preeminent experts as well, better than you'll get at any university. Yeah. It's not the same as getting the exams and things like that, but it's not nothing either. And you guys as well, you've interviewed some of the biggest experts. You listen to what they say, and that advises you. Yeah, and that advises you, and then you go, well, but it's very different from going, this is what I think, to this is an expert opinion. Yeah. And a lot of people present it as, this is the truth. This is what is actually happening.
And if you disagree with me, then you are going against the truth. When the reality is, that's not actually how it works. There is no the science. There is science, and there are different hypotheses, and people hypothesize something, and what is accepted at one point then later turns out to be incorrect. So I'm just very, very suspicious of people who have a set range of fixed opinions on a multitude of different topics, when the reality is it takes a long time to become an expert in a particular topic.
Speaking of that fixed truth, I did a poll on my YouTube channel. Do you think trans women are literally women?
Yes.
I put literally in capital letters, and 90% said no.
Yeah.
10% said yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of them then commented about the true truth, and it was like there were actually 6 sexes, X, X, Y, and that was just extraordinary. But do you think that 10% really think that there is literally no difference then between trans women and women, or are they sort of angry that I asked the question and pushing back against me?
Look, no one knows what a woman is until you want to have sex with one. That's when the rubber hits the road.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Look, the reality is, when it comes to this debate, it's moronic. Can we just say it's moronic? Can we just be honest about this and go, look, there are people who have gender dysphoria. It's very sad. They need treatment. They need help. You know, if transitioning helps this person to pass as a member of the opposite sex, and that means they're happier, they should be allowed to do that as adults, not as kids. Fine. But that doesn't mean that you're a member of the opposite sex. You're just not. And we can dance around this topic and we can go, oh, what is a woman? Look, we all know what a woman is. Can we please stop?
Yeah.
You know, and it to me, it says something far deeper, actually, about our society. It's a symptom of where we've got to, where we feel unable to be truthful, where we feel unable to actually disagree, where we are always looking to avoid discomfort. And discomfort is important. Discomfort is going and saying to somebody, I think you're wrong. No, that's not true. And you need to be able to do that. Otherwise, you cannot function as a human being in society. And this is where we are. Well, we can't say to somebody, you are a biological male. You are not a woman. And somehow that is seen as oppressive, evil, wrong. No, it's truth. And we need to be able to start telling the truth. And if we want to improve as a society, we all need to actually start accepting truth. And there are certain things that are true.
Yeah, I think a good marker of how far we've gone in trying not to offend and being wary of offences. Something you said years ago, actually, in a video. I was doing some research because I'm a good journalist, and you said we'll get to a point where you can't even make fun of, and I can't use the word on YouTube because of the censors, but PDF files is what I call them, who hang around playgrounds. Imagine a PDF file in a playground. And I was doing something on those people. I was doing
They're minor attracted people, Andrew, you bigot.
Oh, no. Well, this is it. But I did meet a woman who is trying to help them.
Yeah.
So I met a woman in Germany who does like a weekly thing and she helps these people. And I do understand if they've not offended or anything like that. Yeah. But to prove what a good person she is, she lets her kids be babysat by this male of those people. How mad's that?
That's insane.
I went and met the babysitter, the guy. I met him at like a swimming pool because he wanted to meet, and I said where, and he showed me the. So I went down, and I didn't realize it was a public swimming pool.
Why did he want to meet at a swimming pool?
So it was before I'd met the woman. I met him because I was talking to Don't Offend, which is a German clinic for these people, right? And I said, can you introduce me to any of your patients? And they said yes, and so I got in touch with this guy who calls himself Max. And so Max messaged me, goes, I'm in Berlin today. I used to live in Berlin. He goes, I'm in Berlin today. I'm going to be here just today. Come to this address if you do want to meet me. So I type it in on Google. Okay, it seems to be down there. I cycle down to the place. It's a fucking pool. So I go, he's there. And I was like, you're right, mate. And he was like, oh God, I am okay. And suddenly like little girls next to him. And I was like, oh, hello. And she's going, oh, can I have some more money for ice cream? And he's like, yeah, here you go. And she goes off. And I said, Max, what's this with the girl? And 2 other girls came over. They'd been in the pool. He's like, oh yeah, here's some, and he's taking them to the pool. So I said, come on, what's going on here? And he says, I'm babysitting. I said, you're not babysitting. That's mad. What are you talking about? You're babysitting. So he goes, yep, babysitting. The woman knows. I've met her. She does this course where she like helps us, blah, blah, blah. And I thought he was lying. So I pushed and pushed. So can I meet her? I've got to meet her because I don't believe this. And I did meet her. And she was saying, you've got to realize he doesn't offend and I trust him. I'm like, yeah, but you don't send your kids to a pool with him. Mad. So that is how far it goes.
Yeah, I mean, that to me, you might as well go, look, I'm going to put my baby in with a tiger.
Yeah.
And look, the tiger's very well trained. He's very well trained and we've trained him and he won't attack the baby. And he's been fed. And it's like, yeah, but it's still a fucking tiger.
Yeah.
That is literal insanity. It is insane. And that's where we've come to, where it's more important to appear virtuous than to actually do the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when a society has reached that point, and when people have reached that point where they're more interested in how they're perceived than in doing what is morally correct, then we're at a very, very worrying place.
I suppose that's the extent to which virtue has a hold on us, even biologically, the way we grew up to virtue in the tribe.
I wouldn't even say it's virtue. I think it's narcissism.
Well, yeah.
I think it's narcissism.
Perceived virtue.
Yeah, where your public image is more important than the safety of children.
Or also your self-perception, because she's not doing it for public image, this woman, because people don't know she's doing it. I think it's for her to feel good about herself.
Yeah, so it's narcissistic.
Yeah.
It's utterly narcissistic. And I'm sure she's told people about it.
Quite possibly, yeah.
Yeah. I'm guaranteed she's told people about it, who are going there, this is a great idea.
She was very far left. She was very left.
Of course she was.
And that can happen when on the extremes of either side.
Yeah.
The thing that happened in Germany's history with the left and PDF files is insane. Because in the 80s, the Green Party were a big part of this whole thing called the Kentler experiment, where they realized in Berlin they had too many homeless boys and they had too many PDF files and they didn't know what to do. So they put them together and they put the PDF files, like they put the kids as foster kids to go and live with these guys.
Yeah.
And obviously they were, like you say, with the tiger or lion, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Those kids were abused to within an inch of their lives.
Of course it will be. Yeah.
And it's a stain on the Green Party now. But it's the far left, of course. It's not, I don't mean to taint the medium left, normal left-wing people with this, but that's what happens.
Well, it's a fundamental denial of reality. And that is a problem with the far left and the far right, that they're ideologues, that they're extremists, and that they don't live in reality because they have their own their way of viewing the world, which is completely distorted, far left and far right. And this is what happens, where you're so demented in the way that you see the world that you somehow think that it's acceptable and morally right and virtuous to put in a sex offender with a child.
Well, this is the danger. And it was a lot of the Parisian philosophers were pushing that kind of thing as well.
Well, they're French. They're all into that kind of thing, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, no, this is the thing. And I think that's why it winds me up when a lot of people, in answer to my question about the trans question, said, oh, well, why does it matter? It's like, well, this is why it matters. The truth matters. This is why truth matters, because it gets taken really far. We talked about that the certain minorities sort of put higher up than others and these kinds of things. But men are not often, and there's a problem there. And you spoke about that on Joe Rogan. Do you think there is an issue that men are facing at the moment?
Oh yeah, I think there is. There's a massive issue that men are facing. We call it toxic masculinity. Well, things are toxically masculine. We never talk about toxic femininity. If there's toxic masculinity, then there needs to be toxic femininity. What does that look like? Well, we don't talk about that because women are brilliant and there's nothing wrong with them, and it just men are scum.
Have I just walked in an argument with your girlfriend?
Yeah, it's true. And I just remember, when I was working in the comedy industry, hearing people say, "You hashtag all men are trash," and I'm like, well, are they? What, every single man? They'd say, oh, my ex-boyfriend. Maybe you just like dating dickheads, love.
Maybe you're the dickhead.
Yeah. Yeah, you could be the dickhead, or maybe you just pick wrong uns. And actually, shouldn't you take some responsibility for that? Or aren't you also part of this process? Are you the type of woman who goes, yeah, I like him, but he's too nice? Well, then stop complaining, number one. And number two, if you think about, male traits, leadership, desire to take charge, the desire to protect, to provide. We demonize men for that now. We want men and women more than ever to be exactly the same. And then we've got this saying, and we now believe that there is no difference between the sexes. As somebody who lives with a woman, and as you've lived, there is a very big difference.
Yeah.
There is a very, very, very big difference.
Well, I suppose they would say we don't know how much of that is societal.
I mean, just look at the menstrual cycle. We have, as blokes, we've all been with women and seen them at a certain point in the menstrual cycle, and we thought, you know what, mate, maybe I can be gay. I could try it. That'd be easier. That's why they're called gay, because they're happy.
Yeah. I get proxy menstrual cycle. When it gets close to my girlfriend's cycle, I start to feel, and she thinks it's me stealing her thing, but I think it's me anticipating what the next week is going to be like.
Yeah, we all know, and we all know the week as a bloke, and you're like, right, okay. I remember once my girlfriend came in, and my girlfriend is very intelligent, rational, blah, blah, blah. And she came in after going for a walk, and she was in floods of tears. And I thought, oh, bloody hell, right, what's going on here? And I went, what's up? She went, I saw an old cat. I'm like, okay. She went, and it looked like our cat. And I'm like, okay. But it was old. And I'm like, okay. And it went, and then she went, and it just made me realise that our cat is going to die. And then she was in floods of tears.
Oh, no.
And then you just go, like, if it's a bloke doing that, you go, right, okay, he needs help. But that is, do you know what I mean? That is just part of the cycle.
Yeah.
And we all know it. And we all know that there's, when it reaches a certain point, there's going to be hyper emotional. They're going to be very, very, very sensitive. Because that's what it means to be a woman. It's just like the female menopause. We all know that there's biological changes. We all know that there's going to be changes hormonally. Same with pregnancy. And we've come to this point where we're like, no, there's no difference. Really? Really? There is no difference? And that has very serious implications when we talk about things like female fertility. Where we've come to this point now, where we're in denial, where we're saying women can have it all. Yeah, but we all know that past a certain age, women's fertility drops considerably. And then what you have is women who are about in their late 30s and rapidly approaching 40, waking up and going, I want a kid. Have I left it too late? And that is a tragedy. That is a very real tragedy, because then you have women who have always wanted a family and children realizing that they're never going to have that. And the sense of emptiness and horror and sadness that creates. It's huge.
It's a huge cause of population collapse.
Yeah, and it's a huge cause of population collapse. And then how that affects society moving forward. And then we need ever increasing levels of immigration in order for people to come over and to work and to contribute to the economy. And then what that does to social cohesion. But it all comes back to this lie that there is no difference between men and women. There is a difference between men and women. There are only two sexes, and I'm very sorry that your video is now demonetized.
I don't know if the algorithm will pick up. It's usually words, isn't it? But it will lose me all my subscribers. So
yeah,
that's the thing. But what I would say is the feminine toxic masculinity, toxic femininity does seem to be a thing. If we go with like this, I'm obsessed with this idea of the status game. Will Storr?
Yeah, we've interviewed Will. He's incredible.
He's great. And so you've got what is it? Virtue is one of them. The three ways. Success is another one. And dominance is another.
Yeah.
If you look at dominance as a traditionally male type of trying to get success and status, and if that when that goes too much, I suppose you can call it toxic masculinity. I suppose women can engage in that as well, of course, but less likely to. And then the virtue signaling to screw over people, that's supposed to be something that women do more often. Men do it as well, because women didn't have the same physicality to sort of be dominant in that sense.
Which is why they engage in reputation destruction. And that's how they they achieve status and also revenge on a man, or whatever you want to call it. Absolutely. And again, it's this dishonesty where if men are absolutely terrible and women are angels and perfect, that's not real life. That's not how things work.
One of my favorite books is Helen Lewis, Difficult Women.
Yeah.
And it's a very feminist book. It's fantastic. And it talks about these women, the suffragettes and all different kinds of women who've done amazing things in history. And the point is, a lot of them were horrible or at least troubling and difficult and problematic or whatever, because that's humans. And if you make them not humans, you're just patronizing people.
Yeah. Think about one of the greatest characters in theatre. It's Lady Macbeth. And if you think about Lady Macbeth, she's pretty much the archetype of toxic femininity. She's manipulative. She engages in, in reputation destruction. She's a real villain. But why has that character and that play stood the test of time? It's because we all know that there are certain aspects of femininity, of toxic femininity, that are very real, that are very true, and she represents that.
Just a bit of Shakespeare on the podcast.
A bit of Shakespeare, mate, and then we'll go back to talking about trans.
Yeah, we didn't leave the stuff. We're not going to leave the Chaucer stuff in because it's too long. That
exactly,
was too long.
And it's filthy. Chaucer is filthy. Do you remember reading Chaucer and going, well, I mean, first of all, spelling is atrocious. Secondly, it's just all shagging.
It is shagging.
Yeah.
That's what they did back then. But again, that's humankind, isn't it? We wouldn't be here otherwise.
Yeah. We wouldn't be here. And that's true. And I love the way that we talk about history. It's so stupid. Where we look back at people who lived 400 years ago and they're like, well, they weren't woke. Well, of course they weren't.
Yeah, well, we'll look ridiculous in 400 years. We'll look horrible and stupid. There's, it's mad. Well, going back to that sort of men. Okay, so men, I do think I have empathy for that. I do, and a lot of people don't. So again, I want to get to the empathy of it, and we see. So Jordan Peterson's another one that I was told by so many people, this guy's an evil, horrible person. Yeah. He does tweet a lot of stuff. His tweeting thing is a bit
I mean, Jordan, when he tweets, I'm like, Jordan, and I love Jordan. I'm just, Lord Jordan, put down the phone, mate.
Yeah, it's a bit extreme. It's a bit Dr. Evil, some of it.
Yeah, and then you just, and he writes in these weird haiku almost.
And the haikus.
Yeah, and you're going, mate, what are you doing? What are you doing? Because Jordan has helped me turn my life around. He has. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he has. Absolutely. What are the things, take responsibility, clean your room, all the basic stuff that as a man you really need to hear. Life is unfair. It's not, it's gritty, it's tough, it's terrible, but that's life. Get on with it. Get on with it. And it's not fair. And what are you going to do? It's not fair, actually, that we're sitting here in Westminster and we grew up in a liberal Western democracy and someone is being brought up in a rubbish dump in for instance in Cambodia, and they're never going to have a billionth of the chances that we have or the opportunities. That isn't fair. That's not right.
Yeah, I'm interested that he turned your life on. Was it the 12 steps then?
It's mainly listening to his pods and interviewing him.
He's just the most phenomenal speaker.
Yeah.
He really is. Just make your bed. Make your damn bloody bed.
Yeah. And the thing I like about it as well is that everyone's got a Jordan impression.
Yeah.
And it ranges from being accurate to Kermit the Frog.
How was mine? I was Kermit, because I think it is. I do the same for Kermit.
Yeah.
And Bill Gates. Here at Microsoft.
Yeah. Do you know, I remember
How's yours?
Yeah. This is mine. So I remember talking to him before the pod and we were just chatting because we've interviewed him twice. And he goes to me, people used to say I sounded like Kermit the Frog. And then I went and listened to him, and I do. And I remember laughing, and I was like, actually, you're a good bloke. You can take the piss out of yourself. I like that.
I like that. And I like also that some of these intellects, whether it's a Dawkins or a Peterson or someone like that, they're so removed from some parts of society that he had to go and research Kermit the Frog.
Yeah. Yeah, Andrew Doyle's like that. I remember Andrew Doyle didn't know who Rihanna was, and I'm like, fuck off, Andrew. You don't, Andrew.
Do you think he's doing that for effect?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm like, Andrew, you're a gay man. You cannot tell me you don't know who Rihanna is. He's like, no, I don't. I just read literature. I'm like, piss off, mate. Yeah, of course he does.
He's on this tomorrow. He's coming tomorrow for this. So I'm going to ask. Should I ask him?
Make sure to ask him. He's danced to Umbrella at GAY. Come on, mate.
Andrew was a teacher at my school.
Was he? Did he teach you?
Yeah, no, he joined the year after I left.
Oh, did he? Yeah, I love Andrew. He's great.
Just missed out on him.
Yeah,
he is very good.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say about Jordan Peterson was I've got a friend who is very part of academia, so has a lot of left wing views and things like that. And I did mention Jordan Peterson, and she said, isn't he awful? And I said, watch a couple of these videos. Actually have a little watch. And I showed the one when he's talking to Piers Morgan. He starts crying, talking about men. And she said, you know what? I wasn't expecting that at all.
Yeah.
This is a guy who you might disagree with, and I think that's fine, but he really cares, doesn't he?
Yeah. Oh, Jordan cares. Jordan absolutely cares, and he cares about men. And just to talk about your friend, this is a very real problem where, again, people have opinions on things they don't know anything about. And instead of just, and partly it's a fault of society where you are forced to have an opinion on literally everything. So people go, what's your opinion on Jordan Peterson? And instead of going, well, I don't know. So if I don't know if you're into football, but if I said to you, you are?
Yeah.
Okay, so, but if I said to you, you know, Harry Kane, if you didn't know about football and I went to you, is Harry Kane the best England striker? You'd be like, oh, mate, I don't like football.
Yeah. But I know that not only is he, but I think he actually probably has been by a long distance.
Yeah. So, really?
Yeah, considerable distance. Well, he's the top scorer. He got the top scorer at like 28. And he assists all the time as well. What a player.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
But you don't have to agree, do you? That's the beauty.
No.
Plurality of opinion.
That is true. I was just
Who was better than him? What, Rooney? Rooney was rubbish by the time he was 27.
Yeah, he was. But
he was good when he was 15. But
yeah. You know, he was so good, though. Yeah, but no, yeah. But he was incredible. Probably the best 16-year-old, 17-year-old footballer I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But no, but that's the point, in that you're forced to have an opinion, and because she works in this progressive left-wing liberal industry, which is academia, she then has to basically say that she doesn't like him, when the reality is she knows nothing about him. It's like when people go to me, oh, Joe Rogan's this. I'm like, have you met him? Have you had a conversation with him? So they're like, no. And I'm like, well, he's not.
Yeah.
I've met him and I really like him.
Yeah. Yeah, he seems likeable to me. He said loads of things that I found offensive.
Yeah.
I find him offensive. Or all my friends say things I find offensive, and I sort of get on with the day.
Yeah, exactly. And he's been so helpful and supportive to us.
Has he?
Incredible. He doesn't have to do it. He doesn't have to do it. Why does he need to help me? What is he getting from it? Pretty much nothing. But he does it anyway. So... And so the people have these opinions about people or subjects, and it's because they feel that they have to have this opinion, and without actually reading about it or engaging in any of the content surrounding it.
These people do exist, though, who maybe are, I don't know, do incite dangerous ideas in young people. Perhaps we mentioned Andrew Tate.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was on Tim Pool on his podcast, flew out there to do that, and that was great. I was really excited, and I'm talking, smiling, having a great time. And this isn't entirely his fault, but afterwards I went and had a look on the YouTube, and there's a live thing, and I've never seen so many people saying horrible Jewish thing, like anti-Semitic thing. I've never seen every single comment, and he gets 50,000 live people watching, so it was just bam, 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 and I felt like such an idiot because I'd been sat there smiling along while they're doing it. So that does exist as well, and I think we've got to say that. Yeah,
you do have to say that, and you get anti-Semitic stuff. I'm not Jewish, but I look Jewish. Right?
Yes,
and I get called a secret Jew.
Hang on, you did a great stand-up about that, actually. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
That had me laughing.
Yeah, and that's, and look, we do need to acknowledge that. I'm going to be absolutely honest. I don't feel banning it and pushing it underground so it can exist in platforms like 4chan, which essentially is a cesspool for these types of opinions. It's much better that actually they're confronted, they're challenged, because you need to believe in redemption. You need to believe that these people can change their mind. People do think abhorrent things. People do think things that are awful. But if you're just going to push people and drive it underground, you're not going to solve the problem. You're just going to make it worse, where they're going to sit in their own little forums and they're going to have their own little discussions, and they're just going to end up radicalizing themselves.
Yeah, that's what I think exactly the same thing. And to go to an extreme point, the PDF files we talked about before, I'm writing a book about that for that reason, because otherwise they just go and tell each other that they're going to do it. So I think you do need to, any topic needs to be spoken about. You look Jewish in the way that Louis Theroux looks Jewish, I suppose, and he's not either. Yeah. But that got him into trouble almost in that neo-Nazi episode. Did you ever see that?
No.
Oh, you got to watch that. Yeah. They all going like, "You look like a Jew," and he's going like, well, and they're going, well, are you Jew? Are you a Jew in my house? And he's going, well, I don't think I should say, which really pisses them off.
Yeah,
but he's not either.
No, and it's actually, that's a very intelligent response, because what he's actually saying is it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And the reality is it doesn't matter.
He did brilliantly. That. It's such a great scene. And it actually changed me as a journalist, because I for a while was making those kinds of documentaries, and it changed me. If someone had said to me and I was scared and they said, are you secretly a Muslim? Something like that, I would probably, well, I'm not, but it shouldn't matter. Yeah. And I saw that and I thought, maybe I could be brave enough, maybe, to just go, I'm not going to say. But yeah.
I mean, that's a very brave thing to do, because the easier thing to do would be to tell the truth and say, no, I'm not, but it doesn't matter, or whatever else.
Yeah.
But just to say, he actually put himself in harm's way there. That's a really, really principled and strong thing to do.
He got a lot of respect for that. Everyone loves him, right?
Yeah.
He's cool.
I mean, apart from the neo-Nazis.
Oh, yeah. But even they do a bit. That's his charm, isn't it? Even they're a bit, Louis. Those particular ones didn't. They kicked him out of the house.
Yeah. So. I mean, his superpower, and I think this is everyone's superpower actually, is he doesn't pretend. I mean, he plays the sort of bumbling English guy to a certain degree, but that is pretty much who Louis Theroux is. When you see him interviewed, that is Louis Theroux, really. So... And that is Rogan's superpower as well. It's that ability to be yourself. And that's what people want. People want authenticity. People don't want what they used to have, which is fake personas. TV doesn't work because it's a fake persona on a fake stage talking about fake things in a fake way. It's done. It's over. Nobody wants that. Look, my parents' generation, your parents' generation, they've been raised on it. They will continue to consume that stuff until they die out, and then it dies out. But for the rest of us, why would you? Why would you? It's completely synthetic, and it just feels false.
And Hollywood in particular, I've heard you talking about that. I mean, there's the Barbie film, and what's your issue with Hollywood at the moment?
I guess my issue is with Hollywood is, and this is from someone who loves cinema. I love cinema. I love theatre. I love novels and books and art and whatever else. I just want to be told a story. That is what we crave. That goes back to sitting around the campfire when we were existing in tribes and having someone tell you a story. It's why the Greek myths are so powerful, and we will continue to read them until our civilization dies out, even though we know that they're not true, even though we know that it's fiction, because it's a really powerful story which taps into something. But we don't get that anymore. Instead, I'm getting told what to think. Instead, I'm getting a lecture. Instead, I'm getting told how to think about the world and what my politics should be. I'm not interested in that. I don't care.
What examples of that sort of thing?
I mean, Barbie was an example of it, where again it was, all the you just looked at Kens, and all the Kens are really, they're how can I put this with the Kens? They're all incompetent, stupid, inept, and all the women are just, really far better than the men, far superior, far more competent, far more intelligent. And actually, the Barbie society, the women without the men, works much better. And I did a comedic monologue about this, where I actually said, like, I don't know about you, but have you ever worked in an office where it's all women? It's carnage. It's absolute carnage. And even the women will say, yeah, we prefer working with the men. Because if it's just women, it turns into an absolute bitch fest.
Yeah, that wasn't in Barbie then.
No, it wasn't in Barbie. It wasn't in Barbie, where they'd see one of them like, man, she's looking a bit fat today.
I suppose they'd say, oh, well, this is just a bit of a satire, a bit of fun or whatever. But I guess they could have poked fun at that aspect as well, couldn't they?
Because it's dishonest.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with, looking at men and saying inept, whatever else. It's when it's disingenuous, and when you know that you're being fed a message. And it constantly happens where The moment you politicize anything is the moment the joy just seeps out of it. It's, for instance, I was in Amsterdam recently and I saw this street performer. And before he started his act, he just went, you know, things are really bad in Holland because of this right-wing Dutch government. And I just thought, mate, even street performers, shut up, light the sword, shove them up your arse, and I'll give you a $5.
Yeah.
Why do I need to listen to what your thoughts are on politics? The moment when you bring the politics into sport, I'm just going, I don't care. Yeah. I don't care.
Last time I remember going to Tottenham. I hadn't been in a while. That's why I had that Harry Kane opinion, by the way, my own bias. But it wasn't last time I went, but it was about a year ago. And it happened to be Armistice Day or whatever, November, whatever. So there were about 5 or different things before the match started. Yeah. Both left and right things. You know, fair enough. At least they got sort of bit of both. The right would be the poppies you have to wear for the army stuff, I suppose. And the left was LGBT. Then they come on the pitch to do an LGBT. I'm here to watch football. Most people here are not anti this or that. They just don't care. Yeah. And they want to watch football. I'm amazed what they're shoving down our throat. I mean, and the poppy stuff as well. You've got Northern Irish players and Irish players who are going, why have I got to wear this? And then if they don't wear it, they become, screamed at.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the famous example is a footballer, I think it was James McLean, wasn't it? And he chose not to wear the poppy, which is his right to do it. And then all of a sudden, he becomes a political pawn. Yeah. And before I was very supportive of the poppy and in sports and celebrating this. But now I've come to the position where I'm like, I don't want to see any of it.
It's forced.
Yeah, it's forced. I don't want to see any of it. I don't want to see the poppy. I don't want to see BLM. I want nothing of it. I want sport to be completely apolitical. I don't want them to take the knee. I don't want them to wear the poppy. I don't want them to talk about trans lives. I don't want any of it. Yeah. None of it. I want it completely free.
Because it's empty, isn't it? Because the England team did that. And then when they were told that they would get a yellow card for putting a rainbow thing at the World Cup, they backed down straight away.
Of course, and that's what Martin Luther King did.
What?
Yeah.
I won't have a yellow card.
Yeah. He goes, what, a yellow card, mate? Sorry. Can't do it. Sorry, lads. I was all for emancipation of my race, but actually, yellow card, no. Backing down.
Francis, where can we send people to, Triggernometry, presumably?
Yeah, you can search Triggernometry, my social media, which is at Francis J. Foster on Instagram, Twitter, whatever else. Triggernometry, where we interview some of the finest minds in the world. Also, as well, I do comedic monologues on there. You can check them out. We've got loads of stuff. It's also available as a podcast if you like it on the go.
Wait right there. If you really want to learn how to resist cancel culture and groupthink, after Francis, you can't miss the world's most cancelled man, Graham Linehan. Hit the like button in this video and then go and watch Graham. It's a must watch.